break down what the core elements of the sabbatical method are and what you can expect out of the experience. I think either way, if you have a copy or if you don't, I would really just love to demystify some of the approaches around how to structure your operation. So really what the sabbatical method is it's leveraging a sabbatical as a forcing function to professionalize your operations. If you're thinking to yourself, man, operations sounds so red tapey and I don't want to be doing this, I invite you to consider that a lot of the structure that we have implemented for our clients, for ourselves, really has helped us access some of the freedoms that we can access, right? Like time off, like, taking consistent rest and being able to grow our business at a pace that feels really comfortable to us without all of the things falling apart behind the scenes, without feeling like we have a hectic work day and without feeling like we're neglecting our personal relationships and some of our goals that we have outside of work. Now, I really, really feel like this is very, very impactful, especially for my parentpreneurs, my people who are in a position where they're growing businesses and growing families at the same time. We don't want to miss out on these really important moments. I'll be honest, when I had my son, Frank, I had never in any stretch of the means had to take a significant time off of my business. My business was about 3 years old at the time. I took for granted that I was able to just work whenever I felt like, and I could just kind of pick up. My husband was in the military at the time by myself about 50% of the time. And I took it for granted. I totally didn't consider that there was a lot of time that I was spending working on this thing and growing this thing and nurturing this thing. And when I was sitting in the hospital with my son, my very first baby, I was in a position where a picture was taken of us and we were snuggling, and it was just post-birth. We had just kind of got into the room that we were in after I had delivered him. The next moment after he'd fallen asleep, I put him in the bassinet and I was on my phone, like answering emails and Slack messages from my team. At first I was kind of like, oof, okay, this doesn't feel good. Like I'm literally putting down my baby to choose work. And that didn't feel great. I felt kind of like a crappy mom. I started making a lot of excuses. I started saying, well, I just love my work so much. And it's why I was excited to answer emails or whatever. But if I was actually really being honest deep down, I felt like I needed to answer those emails. I felt like I was being pulled back into my business. And so what I hope to develop here inside of the sabbatical method and getting this into the hands of more entrepreneurs and more parentpreneurs is really to be intentional about how we leverage rest, as a high performer, right? And so every single high performance plan, whether you're training for a marathon or climbing Everest or really doing anything, right? If you're running a business, right? If we want our business to perform at a high level, we need to implement strategic rest, periods of rebuilding, right? And adjusting and really laying a foundation for the next level of the ascent. And so I'm going to talk about the first and foremost is ownership. And if you've ever been in a position where you have tried to implement systems in the past and maybe your team isn't sticking and maybe they're not understanding or maybe they're not using them, this is probably because you as the owner have probably made excuses like, well, I'm an Enneagram blank or I am a Colby blank and systems aren't my thing and I'm a quick start, I'm not a follow through. This is all language that's really not serving us in running our business. And I don't know about you guys, but as I grow as a mom and a human being and a business owner, I am constantly trying to more deeply understand not only the gifts that I have, which I think is so, discussed and really highly revered inside of entrepreneurial communities, but I also need to become really intimately familiar with what are my weaknesses, right? And to be able to pour into those really intentionally and say, okay, if I have a weakness around marketing, I really need to understand and purchase books and take workshops and do those things, because as an entrepreneur, especially running a small team, you really need to be the owner of your business. And let's be honest, nobody is going to care about this thing more than you care about this thing. And although you are in a position where you have some incredible gifts, you also are probably in a position where you have some drawbacks. I mean, every single person as a whole individual has strengths and they have weaknesses. And I think that owning those, understanding those, and really becoming intimately familiar with what those are in your personal life and in your business is going to change the game for you 100%. I also want to invite you into the possibility that if you get this right, if you become intimately familiar with what you're great at and what you're not great at, you can sharpen your axe and change that truth. And you could probably also lead people who can do things better than you can do them, right? Whether that's systems or whether that's marketing or whatever the truth might be for you, you can definitely own the results of your team and Fortunately and unfortunately, right, we have the power. We can lead by example and allow that to trickle down into our team and how they show up. So if you've been implementing systems or if you've set up project management tools and you yourself aren't bought into using them because you're making some kind of excuse that you are not a systems person, I invite you into the possibility that you can change this. And by setting up simple systems, you actually may really enjoy using them. The second thing we talk about is the plan. Plan for the sabbatical method is actually really, really wonderful because it's kind of like 75 hard for businesses. If we have been in a position where we've been neglecting creating systems or we're overdue for it, or it keeps kind of falling to the back of the queue, the plan is kind of a two-pronged approach. The first is the hard reset. We want to make sure that if you've been neglecting this, just like in your health, we have a hard reset to say, okay, I'm committed. I own this. Bullet number 1 is crossed. I know this. The second is I need a hard reset. I need to make sure that I have a 90-day plan, which is what we give you inside of the sabbatical method, to create a hard reset for my business and start to focus on the specific areas that my business needs to focus on from a systems perspective. The second is the actual habits, right? So once we're done, right, when we train for a marathon or we want to get a 6-pack, we don't just like stop working out after that has happened, right? And so what I encourage is let's do the hard reset, right? Let's do the 75 hard. Let's make sure that we can like really focus and create a quarterly plan to create an amazing foundation around our operations and get ready for the next phase of the growth in our business. And let's take those habits into how we operate, right? And specifically implementing rest at these points is going to be absolutely critical, right? A lot of us talk about the momentum and the launching and all of the things and the hustle and the grinding. But what we actually forget, which will create more longevity for us, is creating healthy habits of rest and input into our business, right? So that give and that take. The third really big important concept is the Operation Simplified framework. Operation Simplified. So this is our core 5-phase framework that really has been instrumental over the last 5 years of serving entrepreneurs at operations agency. We talk about businesses as it relates to personal needs as well. And so how this works and why I've included it in the book is because if you're in a position where you're like, yep, I'm ready, taking a sabbatical, I'm doing the thing, I have my plan together, I know what personality I'm going to be channeling and how I'm going to perform inside of my business. What we need to understand now is like, where do we start, right? What do we need to begin with? And what does a business really need to function really well? And how I actually set this up is next to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So we have a hierarchy of needs, which I feel is pretty widely understood, right? We need some basic things inside of, our human needs. So this is for your human, this is for your biz. We're talking about physiological needs. So this is like food, water, that sort of thing, right? Then we have to be safe, right? We need a home. We need, to feel like we're not constantly in danger or constantly searching, for food. Then we need love and belonging, and we need esteem. And then finally, we can reach self-actualization. And Maslow talked about this in his kind of original theory that they build on one another, but then he kind of revised it and said that, well, we can be, looking for esteem and belonging kind of at the same time. These all can happen together. You don't need to kind of focus on them in sequence, but I think it's really helpful to consider that as a small business owner, right, we have kind of our basic needs for our body and our life and our love and our relationships and how we are, viewed inside of our community, but our business has the exact same needs. And I think it's really interesting to kind of position operations beside this, because really what this is it's an interesting way to view complex concepts in a really simple format. Because if I know my market well, we have the EOSs, we have the Clockworks, we have the scaling ups, we have all of these really amazing, amazing options, one size fits all kind of opportunities for, operations support, but they feel really like big, heavy lifts, right? And what we really need to understand is how can our life and our business really function next to one another in a way that feels really coherent and really supportive. So when we start to talk about business operations, I think of two things when I think of physiological needs. The first is standard operating procedure. So do we have a standard way of fulfilling on the promises that we make to the market? This looks like an internal internal knowledge base for your company so that folks can access, okay, here's how to do all the things that we need to do. It's really, really simple. And it's one of the biggest things that I feel folks miss when they begin to create operations inside of their businesses. They don't kind of centralize a knowledge base. The second big thing that we want to make sure exists is quarterly planning and goal setting opportunities, right? Because what happens usually with small businesses is they'll be first month is in service to their SOPs. Next month, they're in service to their quarterly goals. Next month, they're in service to their SOPs because they're constantly in that feast or famine mode, right? They're focusing on fulfilling, then they're focusing on generating new business and growth. And so it always feels like we're kind of getting whiplashed back and forth. And so these things need to exist inside of a delicate balance in order for us to feel safe. Now, safety for me looks like efficiency and improvement. And efficiency and improvement understanding is that we have consistent ways of fulfilling on projects and things that we're doing inside of the business, and that we have a constant way of improving, right? So we have always are getting 1% better, right? We have consistent projects. Our team understands, what we're doing. They understand what training exists for them. Next, we're looking at love and belonging. So we want to make sure that we have quality and cost at a really solid intersection inside of our business. So this is quality and cost. I want to make sure that your market and your team are experiencing your products or services exactly the way that it's intended and exactly the way that your product or service is matching in your market. I go super deep on this in the book because I think what ends up happening is folks between quality and cost and growth and scale, they end up like vacillating pretty solidly through these things if they don't get the quality and cost stuff right. Because I'm sure if you've been in this position, right, you're like, oh, I have this great service or this great product and we are fulfilling on it really consistently at this cost and at this quality or whatever. And then all of a sudden you start to grow. And then some of that stuff gets jumbled and we wonder, well, why, right? It's because we haven't given ourselves an opportunity to stress test this operationally and make sure that it can basically stand the test of the growth. And I'll tell you something that I talk about quite a bit is that growth and scale are super duper not the same thing, right? Growth is an influx of something and scale really means we're doing more with more. Right? We're experiencing a growth period, and then we can do more with what we have versus really costing us more or our quality suffers or any of these things, right? Then we just get kicked right back down into the quality and cost section. So we talk about growing and scaling and how to keep quality and cost very consistent at that level. And then self-actualization to me looks like prosperity. Prosperity looks really different to a lot of business owners. Like I know so many owners who are like, I want to open 9 locations this year. One of our clients wants to do that. And I'm like, that's excellent. I'm really excited for you. And some of our clients are like, you know what? I just want to stabilize this thing and make it as profitable as possible so I can cut out at 3 and go to my kids' soccer games. That's also amazing. And that is both situations are people prospering, right? And businesses prospering. And I think we really get caught up in the shoulds of the world. And so prosperity looks very different for every single person who wants to own and run a business and, do all the things and make all the impact that they want to make. And, it could look different at different seasons. So this framework is meant to be revisited, consistently, right? I do this at least once a quarter. If I have kind of a crappy week, or I feel like it's been a crappy month and I'm like, what's going on? I feel really victim to my business. I'll take a look and assess my business, at this level and just say, all right, where do I need to be really honest and clear with myself about how this is going? Fourth really important section of this are the critical actions. So in every chapter, I break down each of the bits of my Operation Simplified framework. And then at the end, I give everyone a critical action, which syncs up with our Sabbatical Method toolkit. I want this to be so dang actionable that it's almost silly if you don't start to implement it. I 100% love education. I feel like one of the biggest things that's made pretty much anyone that I admire successful is that they are lifelong learners, but learning is so wonderful and almost useless if you don't take action. And so the critical actions are absolutely geared toward being able to connect you with results that are going to, or connect you with resources that are going to get you results faster. So I've set up the toolkit to be free with the purchase of the book. That way, this cannot be ignored and you can actually take action on these things. I have templates, I have training videos, I have all the things that exist in every single level of my framework. So please, the critical actions are so intentional. Number 5 is the maintenance. So maintenance is one of the most overlooked pieces of operations. I think a lot of us, especially my digital agencies and my software companies, My people love, love, love all the shiny new things, and they love to create really, really cool functioning tools and all the stuff. But a lot of times when we create something that's so complex and has all the bells and whistles, maintenance becomes such a headache. And something that needs to happen, especially as you get started here, is that we need to make this as easily maintainable as possible, not only for us as the owner, but also for our team. Because what's going to end up happening is you do all this hard work, you take the hard reset, and you create some really cool stuff operationally, and then it collects dust in 6 months and nobody ends up using it. There's no adoption because maintenance becomes too challenging. And we all know our neighbor that has that car sitting inside of their driveway that just isn't touched because it's too challenging to maintain or nobody has the time to do it. And so it just sits there and it rusts out. And then it eventually needs to just be taken away and hauled away, and it's completely useless, right? And so a lot of times when I work with companies, they have had something in the past and they just haven't had an opportunity to update it because the maintenance is just too challenging. So I talk about how to create some simple systems in there, or to get started in a really, really quick and easy way without, really functioning at all of these levels and just focusing again on one specific thing. Grab a copy of the Sabbatical Method. Honestly, it is one of the most exciting projects I have ever worked on. And I think that it's going to be so impactful for anyone who reads it. I hope that this overview is helpful to you and that you have kind of been able to chew on some of the ideas and really consider how this could work for your business. And even if you're not in a position to take a full on, completely untethered time off from your business, there are sections inside of the plan where I show you how you can do this while actually not taking any specific time off of your business, how you can channel the efforts of the sabbatical method and really use this as a hard reset and work on your operations while just, leading your team or assisting your team to get some of the results. So I'm really, really grateful that you've taken the time to watch this training, and I'll see you next time.